Yo, what's good, everybody? Right now, we got Armored Core Podcast coming up. Let's see, episode number 1, officially. Moving into some more meaty topics this time. I am Sash, and today with me are... Let's go with Chang first. Introduce yourself, buddy.
Hi, I'm Cheng.
And that's all for that. David?
Yo, I'm Dave.
And System, our guest for today.
Yeah, I am System. Hello.
And System, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
In a nutshell, I am from the UK. I've been playing Armored Core since it demoed in the UK in '98. I've been on the forums on Armored Core Online, Armored Core Archive, Mechaverse. I play Verdict Day. Not recently, but I'm more of a third-gen Silent Line Nexus kind of guy. But I've played a bit of Japanese server Verdict Day and whatnot. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we're happy to have you. Your information is probably going to prove invaluable. Anyhow, so our first topic today is going to be the problem with developers trying to accommodate for new players and the gameplay alterations that sometimes entails. Now, David, you've got a little bit of experience in seeing this happen firsthand in a different community. Would you like to fill us in on that?
Yeah, so we were on about this the other day, but I thought I'd just go over it again. It's the whole thing of, yet again, me chiming in my experience with the Halo community. Recently, there's been a load of stuff going around in there saying, basically Halo 5 broke everything, and it comes down to, in terms of gameplay, the guns all handle mostly like each other. It's like, it seems to be that in the original Halo game, I played a lot of it, and there was this skill gap where if you knew the levels, if you knew where the spawns were, and what weapons were good in certain situations, because they all had different situations in which they were better than other ones, you had more of an advantage than someone that came into it completely unaware of what was going on. You bought it maybe like 6 months to 8 months down the line when the skill gap was very large, and you just get stomped on, and it's the whole thing of people were complaining about this for ages throughout the first 3 or 4 games, and now we have the 5th one where basically everything is tweaked so much in terms of everyone being able to kill everyone really easily that, even if you're a really skilled veteran at the games, you can basically get killed by a 6-year-old with no skill whatsoever, and it's kind of infuriating because it kind of pushes away the veteran players to the point where they're just like, well, if there's no skill involved, then what's the point in me playing, because it's just infuriating, and it's really sad to see, and it's something that I don't want to happen if they make AC6 really accessible, because AC has a history of not being totally accessible. It's kind of infuriating.
All right, Chang, System, you got anything to go off of there? Maybe fill us in with some experience and how the games have changed between all the generations?
Yeah. Well, as the games have changed, so from when we went from Last Raven into the PS3 generation, so with for answer Verdict.
Yeah, I figure we're gonna be talking about Heat a little bit. Yeah.
No, not Heat yet. No. But the games when we obviously had online in PS2, but or not over in the EU from what I knew anyway. I didn't use it, but from having online in the US and Japanese platforms, wasn't as present in the PS2 generation. When we came over to PS3, there was starting to get that shift in focus from pure story play with like online as a side part to the game to online being accessible to everyone, and for developers having to accommodate for people who are going to want to get to that side of the gameplay quicker. Like they pick up the game thinking, oh, there's really great PvP, or there's really great, going online to join a team rather than playing through the story. For me, it's things like part balancing. I've had a lot of things like part balancing, and not for like we have all of our amazing parts, like we have Lotus, we have Strakoza for 5th generation, and we have things like Cougar 2 for Nexus, things that are just broken beyond belief. But more part balancing in terms of story or player versus player, and are they going to balance it for fast-paced gameplay? Are they going to balance it to be adaptable for a story? And I found, for me, going through, that part balancing has shifted really towards PvP, towards team versus team, and parts aren't flexible anymore. They are purely meant for like DPS essentially. Yes, we still have our different build types, we have our different weight classes. But I find that to accommodate for newer players, going back to the start of the topic, I feel like that's have to shift more. How can they make new players feel better about the game to get their motivations up quicker? And I feel like that shift into player versus player is where it's gone to, in comparison to where it's been in the past. For newer players, it's been about giving them the story and how can they feel secure in the story, and giving them all the different leg types, all of the different perks of the leg types, such as not having to kneel down for tanks and quads and things like that, which aren't present anymore. So there's the shift in where they're playing the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and kind of taking on that point also what David said, the big risk is that it's stripping away a lot of what makes Armored Core. There's actually one game in particular I want to talk about. It's not 4th gen, it's 5th gen, or it's not 5th gen. It's actually Armored Core 9breaker, and this is where you see the game start to try to cater to new players, but
Yes.
It takes a different approach, and in doing so, it basically strips away a lot of the interesting aspects of the game, the story, how ranked works, how mission works, the corporations. Most of that is gone in 9breaker. Most of it has been replaced by basically what you would, their training missions where you have to do one objective. Let's say like there's one mission where you have to go sniper, another mission where you have to do maybe a machine gun and destroy in a certain amount of time. And overall, that game is just straight up boring. I haven't even bothered to finish it, and I've had the game for, I think, 3 or 4 years now. And it kind of just shows where the game it's not Armored Core anymore. It feels like a facsimile. It's not interesting. You can't really do a whole lot with it. And while it has kind of the same bells and whistles, they don't work the same, and they don't really act the same either. And you lose a lot of the charm there. And especially for veterans, it just makes the game straight up uninteresting. You don't really want to play it. You don't really want to do it. Sure, there's spoilers, a certain AI in that game, but with how boring the game is, at the very end, you don't care.
The reward is different in 9breaker. For games before 9breaker, the reward was clearing that really tough mission that you've had to change your legs for. You've had to change your weapon loadout to that weapon loadout you really don't want to use. Like you're really proud of using, like for me, I'm really proud of using my right arm rifle and my left arm sniper. But if I have to change to a grenade launcher just to clear this one mission, I will. But in 9breaker, the benefit is doing it in a faster time, or beating that AI, or getting the most points out of it. And when you go on to the 4th and 5th generation again, where are devs looking at giving players a reward? Are they looking to give them the reward in the story, or give them the reward in player versus player? And what gameplay alterations are they making to give them that satisfaction? And 9breaker, like you say, was the first time they went, you know what? We don't want to give them satisfaction in the story. They want to do it quicker, do it faster. That's all they want.
And that's kind of funny to me in some respects, because 9breaker, the quote unquote mission/story, is actually fairly long, and some of the missions are actually a bit tough just to get the most max points. But it's the way it does it which makes it, for me, it basically makes it unplayable, because it's not interesting. There's no kind of incentive from the veteran's perspective to kind of continue on with it.
So basically, too much accommodation just makes it a drag for older players. But why is it that the developers need to make these concessions throughout releasing generations of games?
Well, I think that's pretty obvious. It's because Armored Core is a very complex game, and kind of as a result of it, it has a very small audience, and it has very little, I want to say, reaching power, which is basically the ability to attract new people for it. So kind of as a result, and as popularity for the game decreased in within its own player base, they had to make choices. Okay, are we going to stick with this audience and potentially die out, or are we going to try to spread out a bit more and try to attract new people? What's interesting for me is that 9breaker was that direction. They said, okay, we'll try to go for new people. And then Last Raven came around, and it's basically like, you know what, forget that. Hard mode, everything's going to be on fire, blah, blah, blah.
Hard mode, everything's on fire.
Now, on one end, they may have done this to, ease them into the game, because Last Raven is a game right after Ninebreaker. But at the same time, with the way the two games are kind of made, it doesn't really work. It's just
Where's the disconnect?
it's like a huge disconnect, because one game is kind of like this artificial
One
easiness.
game's got all the training wheels, and then the other one is just like, hey, you're going downhill, and as you say, everything's on fire.
Well, it's like, for example, it's like if you're doing amateur boxing, and then your next match you have to fight,
As the super heavyweight champion, yeah.
Yeah, like, that's insane. There's no way you're going to be able to do it, no matter how well you did in, your previous match.
Yeah, Ninebreaker doesn't give you the intensity of Last Raven in terms of like what you would encounter on a mission, the duration of a mission. Some missions have multiple phases where you might not get an ammo recharge, or you're put under increasing pressure from another wave of enemies, and Ninebreaker doesn't give you that at all. It doesn't prepare you in that linear sense of development.
So they really take you out of the proverbial little cheese maze and throw you into the gauntlet, yeah?
Yeah.
Pretty much. And I think this is also where 4th Gen suffers a bit, because it plays too much on giving the player, the maximum amount of pleasure for what they do, which is, super fast, quick boosting, chain boosting all the time, moving at breakneck speeds. And the problem is that when that happened, Armored Core as a genre kind of shifted a little bit. It went from something like an arcade simulation with tactical elements to kind of more like an action arcade game.
More like Sonic Adventure 2, how fast can you go?
Kind of like that, but you know what? As much crap as I give 4th Gen, I would not say it's that bad. The speed-wise, yes, but everything else, it's kind of okay. And I think for anyone who was watching the Lily Cup tournament, and we were talking about this a bit earlier, it very heavily limits some of the stuff you use. Like during Lily Cup, the most common build in the 1v1 guns match was dual rifles and missiles. I don't remember which ones. There's wheelings and there was an arm-held missiles. If anyone can remember the name of it.
I want to say that's the
Sil-
Medusa.
Sil- Oh yeah, Medusa. Oh no, is it
Or is
it's
it-
missile, the
is it the
extension
one?
missile.
No, I think it's a hand.
It's handheld, yeah.
But
Uh,
regardless, the point still remains the same. It so heavily limits the game and how players can approach it.
I'm half tempted to say that part of it might be the industry itself and the way that it's going, because I'm sure everyone in chat has probably seen it for various games and companies, but there seems to be this emphasis at the moment on hand-holding and deliberately being like, okay, we'll compare ourselves to other franchises, and if we cater more to new people, even if we're like a niche company or a niche game, we can get more people interested in the product, and then we can sell more units. But thankfully, I don't think From's ever done something that drastic in terms of like, oh, we need to change the entire, sort of aspect of what AC is at its core to, cater to new people, because that's the one thing that I'm happy about, but also concerned at the same time if they make another game where it's like, okay, you're going to change it that much that, like we said, it doesn't become AC, it's not even recognizable, it doesn't have any of the older features that make it, classic AC. Instead of, with Ninebreaker, it's essentially just training mode. But if they did more to cater to it, like in some games, you have it where, like in FPSs, for example, they deliberately add bullet magnetism in the console version so that you don't have to have as much skill in aiming. It's like the cursor locks onto a character, or the bullet homes in on a character even when the cursor's not even over the head. I mean, imagine stuff like that on AC. It would be ridiculously ugly.
yeah.
And in some respects, that's what Op Intensify and Human Plus was in older games. But in that one, I think the way it was done was a little bit better because it's not as obvious. So it wasn't until later on that it became fairly known. But back then, if you wanted, if you sucked that bad, the game would give you that help. Because it is actually pretty hard to lose 60,000 credits on a daily basis,
It was a real Easter egg that you had to find. It wasn't like David's describing it. It wasn't
Not
initial
available from the
hand-holding.
get-go.
Yeah, you didn't start up and they went, "Hey, do you need some help? There's this part you can equip." It was just kind of like an Easter egg. It was in all your old school cheat books and things, you know. And
And
even when we progressed with op intensify, because if you think from like you're saying from like from second gen, aren't you, that you had to go negative credits, but in Armored Core 3 and Silent Line, you were talking it's when you clear the main story and you clean. I think it's when you clear the story or when you clear the arena and you get a mail from the controller and it's giving you this. No, you get a mail anyway, giving you this part, and again, it's a reward for completing the game. So that hand holding, it's not really hand holding. It's more that's your sort of like reward.
And the funny thing, too, about the example about the Armored Core 3 version is that it specifically says in the mail, if you use this part, you're going to come off as kind of dishonorable because it basically breaks the balance of the game.
Like the chicken hat.
Yeah.
The chicken hat.
Now, actually, sort of on that note, what you mentioned OP Intensify or whatever, or Op Intensify. I haven't played the game, don't know how it's pronounced. But you mentioned that as like a method of sort of, the gameplay alterations. They're not really gameplay alterations, but just giving people something to sort of carry their hand through. Could you maybe go through each of the generations and maybe pick out some of the biggest gameplay features that were changed or altered to maybe make the game more appealing or easier to play for new players?
Let's see. That's a tough one. I would say...
Fourth gen, third
Yeah.
gen to fourth gen, you no longer have to kneel down to use more powerful back weapons. So, for example, from first gen all the way through to the end of third gen, Last Raven or 3.5, if you were using biped legs or reverse joints or any two-legged standing up, you would need to kneel down to use a grenade cannon. You would have to stop completely, your AC would do a kneeling down motion, and you would have to fire, and the lock boxes were ridiculously small. Whereas from 4 onwards, that's completely eliminated. There are maybe some like animation stops and things like that, but there's nothing quite as crippling as having to stop completely and risk so much damage in terms of gameplay. So in 4, you just switch weapon, and it's pretty much like having Op Intensify. So they changed that to give players, I think, to give them more access to big, powerful weapons.
There's also, in 4th gen, they removed how energy works if you completely run out. Because in older games, if you bottom out your generator and hit 0, it would go into like this red state where you could not use any energy until it fully replenished itself to the maximum. Whereas in 4th gen onward, if you hit the bottom, nothing happens. You're out of energy. You just have to wait a moment, and then you can get your energy back. There's also...
There's lock boxes as well.
Yeah, lock boxes are pretty much non-existent. They're still kind of there, and you'll see it for like some of the longer ranger FCS. But for the most part, your entire screen is your lock box. So it's kind of more similar to arcade games like Extreme Versus or like Super Robot Wars, where lock-on is kind of automatic.
It's more speed-based. So like, I remember when I played the 360 version, I think it's the same on PS3, but the way you lock on in 4, I think, is by pressing in the thumbstick. And then you just, like you say, for longer range weapons, you just wait for the white overlay to run over your target and go red. That's kind of like lock speed, but there's no need to use like L2 and R2 in the same way we've had to use them before, or triggers, which was a ridiculously hard element to use from the onset. So people now picking up portable titles are having that same problem of how do they look up and down on portable titles without changing their control layout.
The largest impacting one from the first, I think it's maybe first 3 gens, was the whole thing about just breaking the weight limit as well. Because it's like the weight limit's there for obvious reasons, and then to completely break that and be able to make some kind of like crazy lightweight AC that can hulk around like 2 grenade cannons or whatever, that's totally game breaking.
That's actually an interesting point, because how much you're able to equip plays so heavily into the game. Like, for instance, I think from Armored Core 2 or Armored Core 3 onwards, you have this stat called the arm weight capacity. And basically what it is your arms can only hold a certain amount of weight. Now, that seems like a very specific stat to have, all things considered. Until you keep in mind you have super powerful weapons like the Kurosawa and Moonlight. And the point of of that stat is to kind of limit those playstyles heavily. So, it's now a lot harder to do two bazookas or like two super strong weapons together. And that pretty much got lost in the transition from old gen to new because it's a fairly complex stat, and it's also, just more code in the background as well.
I think we got stabilizers in replacement for that. If you were to equip all of your heavy weaponry on one side, or to be very front heavy, you're not gonna. That's minimal in comparison. But we had stabilizers in 4th gen, and yes, if you held your front stick forward and you had all of your weapons on your left side, you would drift, and you would have less control in certain scenarios. That's why stabilizers were important at high speed play. But that's the only thing we got mildly to do with that sort of level of weight control in that sense. And even then, stabilizers didn't impact your AC's leg weight, But there is noticeable drift. It's one thing I played with just to think, hold on a second, it's showing that my AC has a center of gravity. Is that an actual thing? So I would load my AC completely to the left and just hit the thumbstick forward whilst boosting. And surely enough, you do drift. And if you then try to quick turn to the right, for example, if all your weight is on the left, when you quick turn, the quick turn is you do not turn as far as you would if you turn to the left because your weight is one-sided.
Now, nobody's talked about heat. I know heat exists. Fill me in.
Oh, no. Can we not talk about heat?
Can we not talk about heat?
So the main thing they got rid of to accommodate for newer players, hey, look at me thing in the topic title, the main thing they got rid of was for in very late 3.5 gen, so Nexus to Last Raven, when you boosted, your radiator would heat up. And when your radiator hits what Cheng was calling, like, you get your red zone, you overheat, you lose armor points, and you also lose energy. So if you've got someone, if you're thinking about this in a 5th gen context, if you've got someone hitting you really hard with that rifle setup that Cheng was talking about, or in 4th gen, sorry, if you've got someone hitting you really hard with rifles and wheeling missiles, and you get hammered all at once, and you're boosting, you're going to overheat, you're going to lose all of your AP, and you're going to lose all of your energy miss and just walking around the map. In actual 4th gen, there is no heat. And they got rid of that completely. And I don't know what we have instead of that now.
Primal armor.
We have primal armor in 4, and then if we then go a step further and we go to 5, what do we have instead of primal armor?
Nothing.
So
I would say recoil resistance, maybe.
Oh, yeah, the resistances, yes, you could argue that, but we've had that all along with solid armor, solid and energy weapons. It's just they added in chemical.
I think you also have armor core or armor break in 5th gen.
You have part damage.
Right.
You have part damage in 3rd gen. Well, so from Silent Line and above, you have part damage as well still, which is kind of similar in terms of armor break, that you can have your weapons broken off and things like that. So it's kind of similar in being inhibited in that way.
Interesting.
But yeah, heat was a bitch.
Yeah.
Heat was a bitch. So I guess all in all, we can see the biggest changes going from, what was it, in Gen 1, David, you said that there wasn't a weight limit?
No weight limit, yeah.
That's nuts. And then I guess moving from 3 and 3.5 to sort of 4, we see the biggest changes take place that sort of streamline gameplay a little bit.
Yep. Kind of removal of the lockbox, changing how energy works, and just a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
Quality of life changes, you could say.
Changes in heat, changes in the part balancing, changes in what parts were available. So we lost floating legs. We didn't lose quads, but we lost how quads worked from say 2 to 3, and then 3 to 4th gen. We lost a lot of traditional old school armored core parts and armored core play styles going into 4th gen.
And when you say traditional, do you think the reason for these playstyles being abolished is because they're just too complex, or maybe for different reasons?
I'd say for different reasons, because the ones I'm thinking of, I'm thinking of floating legs, although I think floating legs are kind of irrelevant because it's basically like running a lightweight, that you lose the jump mechanics. So I can understand that floating legs have pure speed to them, but like we're talking quad. Well, yeah, we're talking quads in 3rd gen, 3.5 gen were a lot slower, and in 4 they had a massive ground speed, they had massive land speed, which, so you're losing that traditional sort of like mobile fortress. It was like a really good midpoint between a heavy biped and a tank, because it was they were still able to pack a lot of power but move. So you lost sort of traditional quad play style, for me anyway.
Let's see. Next topic we're going to go for is, does Armored Core benefit from a single storyline or from the sort of branching out multiple storyline paths that we've seen in some of the games? Now, I'm just going to say, guys, take it away, because I've only played 4th Gen and 5th Gen, and those have pretty linear storylines, except in For Answer, where, of course, you play through consecutive times and the story sort of changes. Any takers?
Yeah, okay. So 4 and 4 Answer actually had a similar storylines to third war, to the rest of Armored Core, to classic Armored Core, in that there was company alignments. You chose who were you with the Ark, weren't you, in 4? Line Arc. I think it was.
Well, I think it was Anatolia specifically.
Yeah, Anatolia in 4, and Line Arc. There was Line Arc, and then the opposition in 4 Answer. But there was still, at the back of it, there was still sort of like company-based political warfare in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But the game itself, the missions themselves were linear, and there was no benefit to doing the missions in a certain path. You ended up at different story endings, fair enough, but doing a certain mission tree wouldn't give you any specific benefits or any real specific parts or, Easter eggs for that matter, in my opinion anyway. But the benefit for me, playing more classic Armored Core, and this is mainly, it's more, you can physically see it in Last Raven. When you complete the game, you can go back and do, like when you complete any game's mission mode, and you can go back and do any mission you want. Last Raven lets you do that, but you can actually see the mission tree and see which missions you're missing and how you get there. So what missions you need to do. And by doing missions, certain missions with certain ranks, so how well you do them will give you certain parts that you might really want to get access to. And in a sense, Armored Core has more playability from a story point of view, and from like a lifespan. Like, I bought this game, how long is it going to last until I go and sell it at GameStop or a game? Because you're thinking, oh, I've not done that story mission, and I want to go back and get that part, or I've not got 100% yet, and I can actually see where I've not completed. And also, like in Armored Core 3 changed it again, and Armored Core Silent Line changed it again, where when you took a mission, at the bottom of the screen you could see a little bar for each company, so Kisaragi, Crest and Mirage were the 3 main companies. Then you have companies like Balena that weren't big enough to be considered. But those 3 companies, if you repeatedly do missions for the same company, you get loyalty bonuses, you get part loyalties for specific companies. So again, having that sort of multiple storyline benefits you, because you can take it by playing different story paths for different weapon unlocks depending on ranks, and just finding them in missions, because you could pick them up using Circle on the PS2 if you found a weapon on the floor in a mission, but also playing it again on another storyline, which is the company storyline. And in classic Armored Core, you get rewarded for playing in those different ways, whereas I'd argue in 4th Gen and on, there's not really that much reward, although in 4th Gen more specifically, that we still have this company-based multi-storyline effect going on. So there's definitely more benefit for me anyway for a branched out storyline over a single one.
I think also
so in a way, oh, go ahead, Shang.
I think also in another aspect, the interesting part is how this multiple kind of route thing affects story, because on both not only the narrative level but also on the gameplay level, it kind of shows you the impact of what you do. Like, for instance, there's a mission, I think it's Destroy the AC. It's the mission where you encounter Rimfire and Zubin El Ganubi. Now,
those dudes.
Yeah.
Is that the guy with the finger?
The finger dude. And
Gotcha.
the other
so
dude.
out of context.
Yeah.
The finger dude.
The finger.
Yeah. But anyway, what's interesting is not only if you do the mission, but also if you don't do the mission. Now, I didn't realize this until I talked to someone else about it a little while back. But basically, if you look at the list of Ravens that are still alive, if you if you don't go through that mission, like let's say if you go through another mission that's available around the same time, you'll see that Zubin El Ganubi still dies, but Rimfire lives. And if you know a little bit about Rimfire and his personality, you could kind of put the puzzle together. And the reason why Zubi, whatever his name is, the reason why he's died is probably Rimfire killed him because he didn't get paid or whatever. And it's these little details of how your actions have an impact on the story and all the other characters that makes it so good. And it's why I like Last Raven so much, and it's split storylines, because not only are you doing stuff, your actions have meaningful impact. Other games have done this, but it's usually not to the same degree, like he was saying with Armored Core 3, and also to some degree in Nexus. Working for certain companies will give you certain benefits, but Last Raven takes it to another level in that it also shows you the full impact. You kill this Raven, now you're forced to fight this enemy, or now you've made enemies with this person, and so on and so forth. And it's so much more interesting and so much more satisfying to do.
I'm glad you brought up the Ravens dying and seeing them on the roster, because it was done really early on, but they only did it properly in Last Raven.
Yeah.
In terms of giving the player and again, when I say reward, I mean if a player is in like you're saying, you're really rewarded by noticing that change, going, oh, that's really cool, that and you're really invested in the story. In Armored Core 3, Silent Line, really early on, it's like the second or third mission where you have to run over all of the cars to provoke the security force.
Uh-huh.
And there's a Raven called Shooting Star that comes out that is hired to protect this highway that you're assaulting.
Yep.
And when you kill him, he does go from the arena roster, but nothing is said in the game at all. So what you were saying about the sort of the story and the multiple paths and whatnot, and seeing the difference in the Ravens, if you haven't defeated him yet in the arena, you lose that opportunity until you've completed the game. So they're giving you those different opportunities. So if you skip that mission, you get to have that arena encounter, but if you do that mission and you kill him, you've lost content until you've played it through again. So again, the multiple storyline has a benefit in that way.
Yeah, and you kind of see this in Dark Souls too, to a degree, where it feels, your actions do have consequences on multiple different levels. And it makes you want to go back and look, at all the possibilities. If I saved this person, what would have happened? If I had done this, let's say I destroyed this objective and, left instead of completing the whole thing, what would have happened next? All these scenarios, all these possibilities, that is an aspect of Armored Core, seeing what could happen if you do this or that. It's a very fascinating aspect that I think has not been delved into enough since Last Raven, and it's kind of been lost from 4th Gen onward.
Yeah, from what I hear, it seems like, in previous generations, like, as you were saying, Last Raven, you sort of get rewarded a little bit for role-playing, in a way. In, like, sticking with a company that you like or whatever.
Well, if you think about it on a kind of metaphysical level, you're being rewarded for being a mercenary, for being pragmatic, for, basically being a dude who's working for money, trying to find what works best for you. Not only your AC, but also which companies you decide to work for. If you work for this company, they'll give you parts, and as a bonus, they won't try to kill you, or maybe they will. Who knows?
As a bonus, you won't be on the black book.
I do really get the roleplay thing though, Sash. Like, I really get that, because when you said roleplaying, I was like, yeah, I remember that, because this was for me. Oddly enough, I've been really talking badly about 4th Gen, but the first time I roleplayed in Armored Core was in For Answer, when you can decide whether to destroy the cradles.
Right.
And for me, that was the first time I went, I don't want to play the game it's meant to be played. Obviously they gave you both those paths, but you're always the heroine, or you're always the mercenary, like Cheng says, you're always being hired to do the standard missions. But for me, when I realised that was an option, I was like, I want to kill everyone. And there is nothing more rewarding than Old King going, 10 million.
Yeah, 10 million.
and then after that, I'm thinking, what's going to happen? I've just destroyed all of humanity.
What are the repercussions of that? Yeah.
And then the following mission where you're being hunted down is like, yes, this is
what I chose. Yeah.
But that is what I chose, and that's what I wanted from multiple storyline. That's role play, and it's the similar. You get similar things earlier on, but nothing that strong for me. Nothing that strong.
Yeah, so that's the strength of the whole multiple branching paths argument, or I guess the different stories and the ability to roleplay. But I would say maybe let's talk about some of the shortcomings of that. Is you know I want to bring up the example of maybe like Drakengard 3, where you have all these different story paths, and the game is pretty long already and involves like 4 different playthroughs, and then the playthroughs after the first one requiring very specific conditions to satisfy your ability to get to them, and basically just resulting in a tremendously long game other than the base game. But most people are only going to play the first playthrough storyline, and they're going to get what is sort of a subpar story experience because they don't know the whole story really. They just get what's seen as the first playthrough. They see the credits and they're like, oh, this game was really bad because they're like, what the hell happened? In a sense, I want to say it's kind of like Dark Souls. Like you just play through it, you're like, I have no idea what I just did. I just killed this guy who was on fire with a flaming sword. That was pretty badass. There's the end of that. Like, don't read the item descriptions or anything. I think that sort of thing might happen in Armored Core games a little bit. Like, maybe the best worst example is Armored Core 5, which doesn't really have a branching story, but you have no idea what the hell's going on in that game.
Yeah. It's like, I think the basic premise is good guys fight bad guys, aliens, blah, 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 something advanced robot or whatever.
But you get the idea of, well, say we try to give the game too much depth to where the player is just confused and doesn't understand that there's more to the game. Like, when you mention the arena stuff, if it's not announced, I don't think anybody's really going to notice that, killing this AC in some story mission is going to delete the Raven from the roster.
Yeah, and that is almost like that's like a big wall put in front of you, because if you're not motivated like that and that's taken away from you, you're like, oh, well, I wanted to do that and fuck this shit, I've just saved it and I don't want to have to wait hours or days or months, however long it takes me to play this game to get to that. And I think if you put Last Raven's story mechanics into Verdict Day, we would not have as many players, because you'd have a really long branching story. When think of the amount of people even now that have gone from EU, or no, not EU, sorry, NAEU, the new Verdict Day international server, that's it, the international server, through to JP. How many people would go through that much of a complex storyline on JP? Obviously,
Oh
most
my
of us
god,
probably
I can't
would.
imagine that.
But
Moon runes everywhere.
Moon runes.
So yeah, it's kind of like, admittedly, the multiple storylines does have its drawback of being a content wall in itself. It provides more content, but there are more walls for people that don't want to go through it. And if a player chooses a certain path, not knowing what path they're going to get on, some paths definitely have harder bosses than others. Some of them, there's really easy progression for some parts of stories in different games. And if you happen to have chosen the really hard path, where you got to destroy the certain pulverizer in Armored Core Last Raven, you're not going to want to start again. Because you're thinking, screw it, I'm almost at the end anyway, I've seen the whole game, I'm not going to bother. And and for friends say we have a new player that picks up Verdict Day and they're stuck on mission. I mean, I remember back when I bought Verdict Day, mission 2 was hard, because that game was a big change for me. Yeah, so Verdict Day. Oh no, wait, was it Verdict Day? The one where there's the train. I think that's in 5 actually. The one where there's the train.
Oh, the train. Yeah, that
train
was a fun one.
That was a really big change for me, and I found that so hard. I put the game down for a couple of weeks because it was so different to what I was used to. And that's the kind of content wall I'm talking about. Is if you find it so hard, you don't want to play it for a while, and you might not go back. And that might put off a lot of new players who want to get with their friends who are online and they can't see the end.
Right, yeah. Actually, I'm going to stop you there and say, for example, my friend had a really hard time in 5 when he got to the Wasteland boss, you know what I'm talking about, and he just could not beat that for the life of him, so you needed a little bit of hand-holding there. Thank God for cooperative play. But I think maybe the issue with this sort of branching storyline and the different sort of paths is, when you see what you think is the end, but it isn't really the end, and I think this is kind of something that From Software likes to do and tease at, is have hidden content. Like if you look at Dark Souls, you have while it's not necessary to complete the story, you have the Great Hollow and the Ash Lake, which are areas that are, I wouldn't say sealed off, but they're hidden in a way that you could, if you didn't know they were there already, you would have no idea that all that content was there. And it's well, it isn't a lot. It's pretty sizable content, and also saying with like the big story. Like whenever I want to play like for Answer or just Armored Core 4 online, I'm reminded that I have to go beat the story again and get all my FRS memory and unlock the parts necessary to compete
Oh.
online, and that's a pain in the neck for me. So what do you guys think about that? Is can story be too hidden or too long, etc.?
Yeah, I agree with you on the FRS memory and stuff like that. Like having to hide things in every nook and cranny of the story. So even if it was a short story, hiding stuff behind content walls such as S ranking or certain conditions. When you were talking about that other game before, you have to replay it with certain conditions. I think that's a real big turn off. I just want to get through, and I want to have equal, well, not equal opportunities. Ideal world, yeah, I want equal opportunities. I want to have as good a chance as everyone else, but I want to be able to play on a similar level to everyone else when I get online. I don't want it to feel like I'm having to. A bit like when you're on a game and it's pay to play, or it's buy membership to get a better weapon sort of thing. I don't want it to feel like I'm missing something and I need to buy it. A bit like if Armored Core released paid for DLC. I would hate to feel like that, like I was so desperate for it, but I didn't know what to do. And that's what FRS memory made me feel. That I was so desperate, I didn't want to go around clearing missions. I didn't know what missions. I couldn't find a guide. And making a player feel that desperate, I think that's quite a bad thing. And if we're talking about, like the storyline, the storyline models, going back to that, it's do you want to make a storyline so vast with so many things hidden in it that you make your player feel desperate, like they're missing something and they don't know what?
Right. I think that's especially the case in the more competitive games where, you're looking for every edge that you can get. And, I mean, let's use the example of, like, say, you had to go find, like, the Sour or something in 5th gen in, like, a mission. Like, being deprived of that as a competitive player is, like, that's beyond annoying.
You're deprived of it in you're deprived of the Sour in Armored Core 2.
Until you find it, you mean, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so then you have everybody scrambling to go get that. And if you make it a big branching story, then you basically just turn it into an Easter egg hunt, and everyone's just like, I remember for me, I was paranoid of playing Verdict Day online because I was worried like that there were parts hidden someplace, and I wouldn't have everything that I needed to play competitively until later on. I was when I finally got A rank, and I was totally underwhelmed with all the shit that it gave me.
Yeah, the head in your emblem. The RF-22 head, is it? The KE based head?
HF227.
227, that's the one.
Yep.
Yeah, like that head, it looks so good. I wanted it, and then when I got it, I was like, okay, it's good. Not that good. I'm really annoyed. I fought
Right,
too
and then,
hard
and
for
then
this.
and then you'd get it in the boxes or whatever in Conquest or World Mode. And I thought that maybe there was like some unique gear that I could pick up from those, and I was like, well, I don't want to run into shit that I don't have yet. I remember it because I went and I hopped in to ranked a little bit, and I fought people that had guns that I didn't have, and I was like, I was like, what the hell are those? Like, I need to go get those before I can like actually play competitively. And that was also something that ticked me off or maybe not ticked me off, but that sort of activated the OCD gene or whatever, was in 4th gen where I would see an AC or a next part of me that had a weapon or a part that I didn't have after beating the game or something, and I'd be like, okay, I need to go, beat whatever mission on hard mode, get some kind of S rank, like, it sort of takes away from the actual enjoyment of playing the game and becomes like, gotta catch them all. Which, I mean, I guess some people can enjoy that, but when you have like an ulterior goal in mind, like playing online, and you want to make yourself as strong as possible for that, I think it can really detract from your experience if you have these sort of walls of content or
Yeah.
gates or otherwise that require you to go and do some some jumping down the rabbit hole to find things.
That's what I'm facing right now in Final Fantasy 14. Like, we just had a new patch come out, and they've released loads of new gear. But to get the gear, you've got to grind through hours and hours of dungeons to save up currency to buy the new gear, so that you can then be good enough item level to do the new content. And that's stuck behind a wall of like probably 50 plus hours. So it's that similar thing of thinking, do I really want to do this? Am I that desperate?
Right, and then when you finally do get all of your stuff ready, I remember this happened to me with Warframe. is I got my Soma, and I got my Murloc, and I got my other BS, and then I was like, I'm done with this game. Like,
Yeah,
I've been so
exactly.
I've been so conditioned to farm up for the gear that I want that when I finally got it, I was like, there is no content that satisfies me anymore.
And then going back with Armored Core, it's like I've seen that part I really want. You do the mission. I've got the part. I'm so exhausted. I'm not going to use the part online for at least a week before I feel ready.
Oh
Because
my
I'm
god, definitely.
exhausted.
Like I remember when I was getting started in 5, I thought I got the Kurosawa when I got the KRSW, and then I saw my friend was a merc and he had like the actual 4-shot Sawa, and I was sitting there like, but how? And I was just devastated.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I think that probably closes out that topic. If anybody else has anything more to say.
In terms of story-wise, just going back to that, I'd say that AC definitely benefits from like a multiple storyline instead of a linear one, purely just because then you get to see it from a different perspective, you get to learn more about the universe and everything, because as we all know, AC's story has never been particularly amazing in terms of how easy it is to follow, especially when, like we were saying about 5, just what is 5's story about? I mean, you could say that a little bit about the earlier games. It's really hard trying to figure out exactly what the story is, but I just think that if it's done properly, like predominantly Last Raven and For Answer, a lot easier to follow than other titles where they either follow a same path, but like we've mentioned before, you have to go through the mail system to find out the more in-depth things about the universe, or you can just have it kind of spoon-fed to you and have the progression be a little bit easier and understand actually what's going on. It's pretty crazy.
All right, I'm feeling strong about this too. So next up, we're just going to give a couple of community shout-outs, and David, I think you're going to lead us in that.
Okay, so yeah, I better get the links ready for this so everyone else can comment on this, because it's.
I mean, I'm psyched about that paperfold white glint. That shit is
Oh yeah,
dope.
that's in there.
That's rad.
I'll get that.
That is
first.
the coolest thing I've seen in a while.
So, I'll grab that and post it in the chat quickly. So yeah, this
Yeah.
is Cheng. You posted this. Where did you actually find this? Just randomly on YouTube?
Yeah, I
This is
just
the coolest.
usually I just look up stuff all over the place, and there's this guy who's been making these like these paper kits on these ACs. He's done this for like a few years now. He's done a Noblesso Bleach, he's done a Stasis, and he does a white glint. And what's interesting is that these things have an amazing amount of detail, and just take a look at them. They're cool as shit.
Jeez,
Yeah, it's
that's
incredible.
amazing.
It's like the stuff you'd get in like a National Geographic magazine back in the day.
Yeah, almost.
It's crazy because when you look at it, it's definitely more detailed, especially even than. And this is going to sound like a stupid comparison, but the official data book, the first official data book for Gen 1, that thing looks like basic polygon models, and this stuff has like actual texture to it. You can see that the
Yeah, no,
joints
this
are
stuff is like
specifically
higher
designed.
detailed than that even. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool when you see something that's fan made like that, and it just has way more detail.
Yeah.
Well, it goes to show later on as well that he's using things like copper wire on the inside to hold it all together. It's really well thought out.
Right.
Yeah, it's
It's like 4 minutes onwards. It's in that video that we can send. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing to see, the application of someone's skills and just how well it comes out, because that looks. I want that. Like, I'm not a big fan of
I
white
want
glint,
that
but I
too.
want that.
Yeah.
This might just be me, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say if you put that on a table with some of the other, like proper kits, and then looked at it from about, say, like 10 feet away, you'd be hard pressed to say, like, oh, that looks like it's made out of paper.
Yep.
Well, yeah, because especially because it's paper as well. It's like easier to like panel line and do more detailed on. Whereas if when you buy a kit, proper panel lining takes forever.
Yeah. So after that, we have coming up the AC, one of the many ACs that's made out of Lego here by Steve
Oh,
Riche.
those are the coolest. Yeah.
I do like how creative people can get with this type of stuff, because you wouldn't think, or at least I don't think that, or I used to not think that Lego could be used for anything other than the official kits, but you get some really crazy creativity.
Yeah, there's actually one out there that's almost like a perfect almost perfectly identical to one of the intro ACs from AC3, the one with the machine gun. Like, it's amazing stuff what you can do with it.
Just having a look around now. It's crazy trying to go through all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we find that one?
The AC3 Lego one.
I mean, if you want to talk about it. I mean, this quad, though, just is incredible.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
trying to look up what gen it was. Like, I know it's not like an actual, but it looked. I was thinking, oh, there's things I can see from Gen 3, but then I'm thinking it is probably a like birthday kind of thing.
I'm trying to find the one that Cheng was on about now, because if I remember rightly, in Last Raven, that was Dirty Slime. I'm just trying to...
I believe so.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just come up on the wiki here, but I'm just tried searching it, and it's not come up with anything, unfortunately. There's... What's that one? There's one here that has a VOB from what looks like Gen 4. Hang on.
The links. Oh, wow, that's cool.
Oh, whoa.
There's a bunch. There's also, I believe, a white
Wow.
one too.
Is that Krasnia?
Yep.
Yeah,
That's sick.
that's really close as well. That's like,
That that looks proper, don't it?
It does.
yeah, he's really caught. He's really got the Aaliyah legs.
Mm-hmm.
And the arms actually. He's even got the grills on the arms.
Yeah,
Ah,
that's really cool.
do want.
So yeah, then we have stuff that Cheng posted, which was the side stuff from Dengeki Hobby Magazine.
Yep.
The side story stuff. Cheng, do you want to go into that? Because I really don't know anything about this, but it looks awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
so,
please explain.
So, this is something that's fairly popular in a lot of these hobby magazines, is that they'll actually do side stories on various series. Like Gundam has a particularly huge amount of those. I'm not sure about how canon these are. I'm assuming they are, but Armored Core obviously has a very weird storyline. But anyway, these are basically where people put together model kits, and they basically tell a story with them. Like, for instance, there's Armored Core Retribution. Some of those ACs which appear in, I believe, Armored Core Last Raven Portable version. There's also Armored Core 4 Ambrasier, which tells the story of, I think, Krasnia and some kind of encounter with White Glint. It's
Hell yeah!
yeah, it's a bit hard to tell, but basically these are basically side stories which give you, give you a different look on the series, basically, as you find out different things about ACs. But like I said before, I'm not really sure which ones are canon and which ones are not. It's very interesting, though, just to see not only the images, but also kind of the work that's put into this, because a lot of these appear in multiple magazines, like Armored Core Retribution. That's a 3-part series, I believe. So, that's
There's
probably...
a lot of work put into that, yeah.
Oh yeah, and there's still a lot more I haven't found yet. I'm still just looking around for these magazines, trying to find them.
That's really interesting. If we could get translations of these, that would be really cool.
Yeah. The good thing is that also these ones are a bit shorter, so if we do find someone who knows some Japanese or moon runes,
Moon runes.
yeah, it would definitely be interesting to see what they had to say.
All right, did we have anything else?
Yeah, I've just got a couple more here. We've got the final episode of the AC2 hard playthrough by Elliot Newlin. I
that's
just
right.
thought this was cool because it's not often that you see someone actually post a full playthrough of hard on AC. I think it's 1 through to 2 at the moment he's done.
That one's always
That's
a cool
pretty-
one to watch.
The interesting thing that I liked about this one is the fact that I've not done this myself. It's the first time I've actually seen someone do it. Is running a tank build on the last level versus the last boss, Leos Klein in the Martian AC.
And he runs quite.
that
That is quite an
possible?
interesting build. It is. He's using a heavy tank build with the wax head, so the radar head.
Oh, okay.
With the spread rocket and the Titan missile launcher.
Oh,
And what he has ECM maker and a bazooka, so it's quite a heavy loadout, but
Now, what's the
Yeah.
goal of that?
I think it's just for more AP at the end. I'm not entirely sure. It's like when you get to just the last bit, he goes through and loses about. He starts with 3,000, 9,300 AP, and then he loses 3,000 on the first form of the boss, and then on the second form he kind of gets slammed pretty hard. So I'm assuming it's just going for the whole heavy hitting, lots of AP kind of thing to try and defeat it that way, because I'm assuming hard mode probably makes it just a little bit more awkward because the AI probably does more damage. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, because even before he gets there, when he goes into the corridor where Emil is, that's where you get your AP replenished, and just before that last final gauntlet, and he's below 2,000 AP, and he started on 9,400. So he's obviously going AP heavy to try and survive the whole run.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's also got missile interceptors as well, so it's a proper fortress build.
So that one's
Wow.
so that one's an interesting one. And then also, like me and Cheng have been on about previously, we've got community member Aizen Sosuke that's done Op Intensify in Generation 3.
Oh yeah.
Cheng, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's so. With the Armored Core Lacerator Portable, we found a way to emulate it on PPSSP, as we kind of said last episode. But it was also found there was a way to get Op Intensify to work on it too, and basically he's been posting videos about this, and it's very interesting to watch because you just see him just steamroll pretty much every single build he comes across. Zenaida, Evangel, Pulverizers, Ultimate Zenaida. And it just kind of gives context to just how powerful, Human Plus and Op Intensify is, where it basically breaks the game, and it's kind of the reason why we don't have it from Nexus onward.
It's making me really sad because there's no heat. Where is the heat? He's boosting without heat repercussions. I can't handle this.
It's so hard to watch.
That's
'cause,
cool.
like, where's the fire? Where's the burning? Why are you not on fire?
I can see.
Where's the
you can see-
burning? Where's the sadness?
He's using that. What I was talking to you about earlier. He's using the quad channel boost of the UN8, which is meant to be really bad. And all you can see is Op Intensify is doing so much work. The radiator is flickering from 20 degrees to 23, and then it's going down again. And normally you'd be going into the hundreds in a couple of seconds,
Yeah.
even with like an S rank cooling
Wow.
setup.
I think from the energy drain alone, and then how instantaneously heat goes up, you probably just bottom out within a second.
Oh, this is upsetting. But yeah, very, very. But that is what Up Intensify is for. It's for that sort of like I played the game through, and now I just want to take out my vengeance on them all for making me do this with heat. It's kind of that sort of feeling of like, yeah, I don't have to do this anymore.
So going backwards, we've got two Gen 1 videos. The first one is something that I found quite fascinating, considering I've been trying to get a speed run down for AC1 that's actually faster than the one that's uploaded on YouTube, but it's pretty awkward. And this one is something that I've never tried before, which is doing Justice as fast as possible using the secret heavy rocket part that you get on one of the bridge missions. It's one of the earlier missions in AC1. I can't remember the exact name for it. But basically, it's just using that rocket part to get past Justice's shields. And it's pretty insane because I didn't actually realize how powerful that rocket launcher is, because normally I'm using like guided rockets, the ones that lock on, sorry.
Those are missiles.
No, sorry.
Those are missiles.
I referenced them all as the same thing. I'm a complete casual. But yeah, I think it's crazy that that entire level can be done more or less in about 40 seconds.
Wow.
Especially with that,
Jeez.
considering he's just focusing on getting rid of the force fields that lead to Justice's core. And it seems like just one rocket and the shield's gone. So for optimizing speedruns, that's pretty good, actually.
That's some good tech.
And then on the other Gem 1 video, because we seem to be getting quite a few of them recently, this one by Randy basically is just blading the hell out of one of the ACs on Master of the Arena, but it's cool because of the way that the unit's set up, because it's literally just kind of, I'm lightweight, I'm fast, let's just try and get round behind you and use the moonlight to blade the hell out of your armor. And it just shows how effective a lightweight is in AC1, because in AC2, there was someone the other day said everything feels a lot heavier and clunky, and I have to admit AC1 does feel floaty with a lighter build because you can definitely feel how it affects your movement and everything compared to different setups. It's also crazy because in terms of gameplay changes, you'll note that the laser blading on AC1 is almost continuous. You can just chain them over and over and over again, where you don't actually get that in any gen onwards, from what I understand.
Yeah, there is no animation lock in Armored Core 1. It's ridiculous. It's great.
That's cool.
Whereas you
Just
do
keep swinging.
have, yeah, you get your animation lock in it from like 2 to Last Raven, and again you can sort of chain blade in 4.
Well, yeah, chain blading in forward because you can carry yourself forward and just go right, left, but
It just
That's
looks like you're
cool,
wading.
yeah.
It's just like you're wading through water. Or a ball pit. Just wading through a ball pit.
That's why it's called swimming, boys.
Swimming through the scrub.
So the last two here that I've got are kind of related to stuff that I do, but this one is the scanning of the official data book of reference materials from Armored Core 1. And
Oh,
this one was pretty
sweet.
cool because it was like 105 pages of just official artwork, and it was hard to get the images of because I used an iPad basically, so it was more or less just taking pictures and hoping that the pages wouldn't fold in on each other. But I just love the way that it gives you a little bit more of a insight into the universe and how it was created, especially when, you know, there's some diehard fans that say, you know, AC should always remain as this faceless protagonist, you know, that doesn't say a word and everything. But I actually like the way that this is official art that From did that shows that, yeah, they actually put thought into the characters and this is actual official stuff. It's just they never wanted to go that far in, or they couldn't because of restraints to do with technology and things.
I would say it probably has to do with the fact that they were focusing so much on fine-tuning gameplay and just how difficult it was. So they just that was that half of the story they just had to, you know, cut out.
Yeah, it's cool when you look at some of the coloured ones in here, especially like the cityscapes and the characters, the way that they're done. It shows a lot of, you know, the common motifs from various types of anime. I mean,
oh,
it's like
definitely, yeah.
the visual cues for the cityscape on one of the images. I'll try and send a link for it, where it's one of the flying MTs looking over the city. Just the general shapes of the buildings and everything. You can see a lot of that kind of similar design if you watch. Like, for instance, one that I watched recently to try and get inspiration was Bubblegum Crisis 2040, and that has a lot of similar style to it. Now, I don't know, like, if I go into the credits of that, whether it'll show Kawamori in the credits. It might do, because he's credited for a hell of a lot of things, but I would not be surprised, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that looks kind of like it's straight out of Akira.
I thought Akira.
Yeah,
One thing I
that's
liked,
some cool stuff.
well, I really loved looking through this. I mean, I think I commented on the very first picture in that photo set. I liked how looking at some of the parts, you can see inspirations for parts in later games, or just how they've dropped. You know, you always pull things from what you've got, but like the very first picture, that beige HRJ, the legs look identical to the Heavy Crest legs from 3rd Gen.
Yeah.
Heavy HRJ, and for me, it's not like, I'm not like, oh, they copied it or whatever, or they just reused it. It's like, no, that's really cool, because I didn't get that from the original game, and you see the, like Dave saying, like, you see it in a different light, you're seeing the universe in a different light, and I really love that. Just seeing all these parts illustrated differently. It's kind of like seeing Tomb Raider from the PS1, but actually seeing what she looked like, but you can actually see what your mechs look like in properly.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing is definitely the character designs, because you know, as you said, we've always seen Armored Core protagonists as, like, you know, silent, you know, faceless ones, but no, this is really cool seeing, like, the sort of the common anime tropes fulfilled in some of these characters. Like, you got this Sephiroth looking guy.
Yeah. Well, I know it's been covered on the wiki as well, but it's interesting to note that Hustler 1, Nine Ball's pilot, basically is, I think he's meant to be a hologram in this because of the way that the bottom picture of him portrays him as like a bluish kind of tone. I don't know what they were going for there, but I think someone mentioned a while back that he was meant to be based on Arnold Schwarzenegger, or
Really?
it might have even been a joke, you know.
Oh my gosh.
It's the can't he?
It's crazy. The one thing that I was talking to about this with someone the other day was that each one of them seems to be kind of a stereotype the way that they're designed, but at the same time, it's just weird looking at them and thinking, that's an AC pilot. Because I mean, looking at stereotypes and just general things here that you can pick up on. There's obviously a Chinese pilot wearing traditional Chinese robes, so you know that character's Chinese. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
super tropey.
you've got like I wouldn't go as far as saying tomboy girl, but Lynx Minx, the pilot for that is kind of this like crazy red-haired chick that's got kind of like
Right.
this Ellen Ripley style vibe going on a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit.
If anything, that looks very much like one of the characters from 08 MS team.
Oh yeah, the little girl that they pick up who's a
Yep.
rebel.
She's a rebel.
The other thing to note is that there's no actual single defined pilot suit like Last Raven with the characters. There's only like 3 characters that share a similar kind of setup. The first one is the guy that's in kind of like a red suit that has body armor on in one of the other shots, and it shows you how the armor goes on, which I can only assume is like an early Gen 1 pilot suit. I'm not entirely sure. Then you have Valkyrie, who has kind of a female version of that, but has like a leather jacket over the top. And then you have one last one, which kind of reminds me of every stereotypical like fiery dude character. It kind of reminds me a little bit of one of the main characters from Super Robot Wars, except that his suit's white instead of red. And it's crazy, but that's the only thing that I can find with this kind of thing is those characters have one running theme and it's similar style clothing. But there's, like I said, with Last Raven, you can see there's a pilot suit, and that's taken over into the manga. So it's like it's an established uniform that pilots wear, whereas in Gen 1 it just seems to be like, let's wear whatever we want to work kind of day.
That's cool. I think the other thing to take note of is that they actually have kind of like a cockpit view scene.
Yeah, that's
It
one
looks
thing
really
that-
cramped, but that's really cool.
It's crazy because it's the only thing that you have to kind of go off in terms of size, because there's always been this debate of like how big are a Gen 1 ACs, because you get this kind of you get this weird thing in game where your AC is just bigger than a car, but in
Yeah.
other scenes it's like it's almost the same size as trees, and it's like it makes no sense. So that
Scale.
there's this whole thing going around that like ACs from Gen 1 are in between 8 and 10 meters tall, and I can kind of see that with just how cramped the cockpit is there. But that's one of the same general purpose ACs that
Yep.
Sumika uses, but it's not in Sumika's colors, and she was from Project Phantasma.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really interesting to note. And then the last thing that I had to show off, kind of, like I said, again, related, but this is more talking about the forum user that helped me. This is from Guvert's Bjorn, and this is some 3D stuff that he's been working on. And I really like this purely because a while back he was doing a lot of AC1 parts, and I just asked him by any chance did he want to help me do some stuff for limit release. And basically he's gone ahead and done exactly what I asked. The thing that he's done is he took my model and unwrapped it for me while I was busy doing other models, because I've got so many to go through at this point. And what unwrapping essentially is if you've ever made like a box out of paper and then glued it together, you start off with what everyone generally tends to call a net. You just draw it out on paper, you fold it up, glue the corners, and then you have a box in 3D. And he kind of does that, but instead of gluing it together, he cuts all the edges apart, so it makes the net, and then that makes it easier for me to put the textures on. So it makes the process a lot faster than in the program that we've got, instead of having to go through the traditional route, which would take about an hour or so, which it's really helpful to get other people on board at the moment. But like I said, it was one of those things where he was doing his own 3D based on Generation 1 materials at the time. And I just thought, he's already doing AC stuff, would you mind helping? So that's more or less a shout out to Gooverts.
Awesome, and the result, of course, is just amazing. Like this deserves to be in what I think I previously compared it to Armored, or no, to a Unreal Tournament. It looks like something's out of that, but the quality of this model is really sweet.
It's one of those things where we're hoping to get consistency like that across the board for all of the parts. But one of the things that we had to take into account is that we abuse poly counts a little bit. Like, for instance, the PS2 version of AC uses very low poly counts, obviously, because of the time it was done at. So now what we're doing is just upping the poly count a little bit by, doing some of the details from the textures that you'd normally see as flat, but we're doing them in full 3D. And then just abusing how many sides on cylinders we have, because a general understanding a couple of years ago was the maximum amount of sides you would have on a cylinder was 12, and you were trying to get as low as possible. In some cases, you'd even use like a pentagon because you can get away with it. But now we're doing stuff, the lowest we've used is like 12 to 14 sides, and the highest we use is 22, because you get that really smooth edge on it. And it's one of those things where, because graphics have intensified a lot, you get to just do that, and it looks overall a lot better for it. So it makes it, the illusion of it being higher poly, a lot more convincing.
It looks really good regardless.
But yeah, that's all the community stuff I could get hold of, because it's the most recent stuff.
Damn, that's cool. Alright, we got anything else, guys?
No, I don't
I
think so.
think that about wraps it up.
I think that's it for today then. Alright, well, any final remarks? I guess we can close out this first official episode, or what?
I still call it number 2.
You call it number 2, but the previous one was 0, so...
I know, but I forgot that. And when I put up...
I know, but I forgot.
when I put up the graphic, I put number 2, so technically it's number 2. Deal with it.
Technically, it's number 2.
But Sash introduced it as number 1, and he even did it properly.
Shut up, I'll edit that out.
Oh, no. Just like the Armored Core story, we've corrupted our timeline irreparably.
Because we're all working.
All right,
with
guys.
The inspiration is from Shane.
Oh, definitely, that's right. He's manipulating us from behind the scenes, putting on a good face with the community. All right, I guess we're going to call it there, guys. Glad you listened to us. You stuck with it so long. And System, thank you for coming with us on this this wonderful experience. We're glad to have you as a guest.
Anytime. Anytime.
All right, wonderful. See y'all later.